Hello there from Central Virginia. Have you ever had that thing happen where you just get a squash and it gets away from you? Well, that's what happened with these squash. These were supposed to be little lemon squash and they got away. So I'm going to stuff them for dinner. And here's how I'm going to do it. Now you can do this stuffing of squash many different ways. I'm going to make this a grain-based and a vegetarian-based, not vegan, just vegetarian. But you can easily put meat in here, ground meat, and it's a great way to use up leftovers. For example, I've got some leftover pesto here, and I'm going to be using this pesto to mix with some bulgur wheat. You can use any kind of grain. You can use couscous, you can use pasta, you can use orzo, you can use rice, but I have bulgur wheat, which is going to be my basis. I'm also going to add in a chopped up onion and a tomato. I have a lot of tomatoes in the garden right now. People say too many, but I say there's no such thing as too many tomatoes. And just salt and pepper. So this is going to have plenty of flavor coming through with that tomato and that pesto. But I probably will throw a little bit extra cheese, some grated cheese, on top to give it that nice bubbly finish. So let's go ahead and get started with this. Before you get going, you want to set your oven at 375 and let it preheat. The very first thing I'm going to do is slice my squash. Now you can do this with any kind of squash. You can do it with a zucchini or a traditional yellow squash. And it's a great way to use up those squash that have just gotten a little bit too big. First thing I'm going to do is scoop out the seeds because I really don't want to have that seedy bit in there. Okay. I'm going to continue to scoop out the squash, and then I'll be right back with you with the next steps. Next thing you want to do is you want to chop up your onion, just a rough chop. If I weren't using pesto, I'd also add some garlic in, but the garlic, there's plenty of garlic in the pesto. The pesto is going to give it lots of flavor. And if you don't have pesto around, this is just, use whatever herbs you like. You can pick some fresh basil, you can use some oregano, and just, add whatever herbs that you enjoy. Fresh or dried is a very flexible, wonderful thing. If you have extra tabbouleh left over or some extra grain-based or legume-based salad or meal, this is a great way to use up those leftovers. Put these in a bowl. I could saute this first, but I'm doing it the really lazy way. Next thing I'm going to do is just add some of the bulgur, some of the grain. Again, I'm using bulgur, but you can just as easily use rice. Great way to use up some leftover rice. Next thing we're going to do is just chop up this tomato. You can use 1 or 2 tomatoes. I have a lot of tomatoes. I might end up putting another one in here. It's going to give it nice depth of flavor. In the wintertime, if you don't have a fresh tomato, you can go ahead and use a little bit of canned tomato or some tomato sauce, or even some sun-dried tomatoes. Okay, next let's go ahead and mix this up. I'm going to add some salt and pepper. Next, we're going to add in some of that lovely pesto. I'm going thick on the pesto because I really want that flavor coming through. It's going to add a lot of cheese in here and also the nuts that are in the pesto as well. Again, if you don't have pesto, just use some olive oil. Just use some nuts if you want to. That gives a little extra protein. And throw some cheese and garlic in. I just happen to have extra pesto on hand because it's summer. I just have lined my broiling pan with some parchment paper. You can do this on a greased sheet or aluminum foil as well. You can fill these way up because they will cook down. Mound it up. To the top of this, I'm going to sprinkle a little cheese over top. Even though it's got cheese in the pesto, I find that a little cheese topping is just a very nice way to highlight your squash. Give it a little something extra. Just a little sprinkle on each one. Then I'm going to put some breadcrumbs on top of each one as well. Just sprinkle over top. So once you've got everything set and your oven is preheated, all you have to do is pop these in the oven, 375, and I'm going to cook them for about 40 minutes. I'll test them to make sure they're ready. If they're not ready, I'll leave them in a little bit longer. So great way to use up extra squash. Great way to make sure that you can get all the goodness out of your garden. If you love to garden and you love to cook what you grow, and sometimes your garden gets a little out of control, like squash get away from you, this may be a channel for you, because I love to garden and I love to cook what I grow. So consider subscribing. Thanks so much for watching.